And Abraham journeyed from there to the south and dwelt between Kadesh and Shur and stayed in Gerar. Now Abraham said of Sarah, his wife, "She is my sister." And Abimelech, king of Gerar, sent and took Sarah. So it's been a while since we've been in the book of Genesis. Just to give a little context. The last we saw Abraham, he was interceding for Sodom and Gomorrah. And to go back just a little bit, there were 3 men who came up to Abraham's camp. And Abraham and Sarah, they prepare a meal for these men. And one of the men stands up and says, "Abraham, by this time next year, you and Sarah are going to have a child." And if you remember, Abraham and Sarah have been barren for their whole entire marriage. And so this man, as we believe is the Lord, prophesies that they will have a child. And so after that prophetic word, the 3 men, they go and they look toward the city of Sodom and Gomorrah. And Abraham is following close by. And they call out to Sodom and declare that this great and evil city will be destroyed. And Abraham knows that his nephew Lot is living in the city. And so he's interceding. "Lord, well, what if you find 50 righteous people in Sodom? Are you going to destroy the city if there are 50 righteous? What if they're 45? What about 40? What about if there's 30? And he goes and dwindles all the way to 10. If there's 10 righteous people in the Lord, would you still destroy Sodom? And the Lord says, "I will relent if there are 10 righteous people in Sodom." Spoiler alert, there weren't. And so the Lord, the 2 angels, they go into Sodom. They grab Lot and his family, and the Lord destroys Sodom with fire and brimstone as an act of judgment. And now we come to chapter 20. It says that Abraham, now he travels to the south and stays in the land of Gerar. Now Gerar is a Philistine city close to Gath where Goliath lived at. And we read that Abimelech was king of Gerar. Now Abimelech is not a name like John or Josh. Abimelech is a title. So think of Pharaoh. Pharaoh is just a title, or president or king. So Abimelech is just a proper name. The word Abimelech literally means a royal father, or the king is my father. And we read that Abimelech notices Sarah, Abraham's wife, and Abraham tells his wife, "Hey, just say you're my sister." Now, if you know your Bible, or if you've been with us on Wednesdays night, this is not the first time that this has happened, or this has occurred. Abraham has already lied before about his relationship with Sarah. And it happened in Egypt. In Genesis chapter 12, Abraham goes down to Egypt because there's a famine in the land, and he's afraid for his life. So he says, "Hey, Sarah, just say you're my sister so I don't get killed and they take you away." And now, here we are again, years later, and it happens. And apparently, Sarah, at the ripe old age of 89, was still attractive and was still turning heads. And Abimelech sends for Sarah, thinking that, if she's just your sister, then I'll take her into my harem. She will be my wife. And even after the Lord has proven himself faithful to Abraham, time and time again, and delivering him from Pharaoh, having great victories in battle, promising him just a couple chapters ago, "Hey, you will have a child. And through this child is going to come the Messiah." Abraham is still walking in fear. And once again, he lies about his wife, about the relationship. Why? Because he's afraid to lose his life. And lying, specifically lying, can seem like the best way to protect yourself. I'm just going to make this quick calculation to save my own skin, to save my own life. But again, sin is a good mathematician. And what feels small, what feels like a clever solution, we'll just say you're my sister, so everything will be okay. It's going to add up to greater pain and have heavier consequences, and there will be deeper regret later down the road. And this is going to be the principle we'll be following throughout this section. And we'll read and see that Abraham's little lie, it's not really little, but Abraham's lie won't just affect him and Sarah, but it's going to spread to those around him. When there's one lie, I like to say, when there's one lie, there are 20 lies. Because if you keep lying, you're going to have to lie to affirm that lie, and to affirm those 2 lies, you're going to have to lie some more. In Proverbs 6, verses 16 through 19, it says, there are 6 things the Lord hates. Let's pause right there. What do you think the Lord hates? Well, he probably hates, murder. He probably hates, sexual immorality. What are the top 6 things you would think the Lord hates? Well, 3. No, 7 things. He detests haughty eyes. What are haughty eyes? Being prideful. I am better than you. What's number 2 on the list? A lying tongue. 7 things the Lord hates, and number 2 is lying. You wouldn't think that would be on the top 7, would you? Again, sin always comes back bigger, it comes back louder and more destructive than it was before. It doesn't stay small. Sin doesn't stay small. It doesn't stay contained. But it multiplies and spreads, afflicting not just you, but even those around you. What starts as it's just a minor compromise, compounds into major consequences. It's just a little. Well, if you shoot a rocket to the moon or to the sun, 93 million miles away, if you're off by 1 degree, you're off by 4,000 miles. That's the equivalent from Hawaii to New York. That's a big difference. But it's just 1 degree. That's going to have major consequences down the road. Sin doesn't just add. Sin multiplies. 3 plus 3 is 6, but 3 times 3 is 9. That's what sin does. Whether that's specifically sexual sin, how does sexual sin go? It starts with lust, and then let's talk about our country. It talks with lust, then normalizing like porn, and then it starts with, sex outside of marriage. You can't tell people what to do, and then it becomes homosexuality, and then it becomes drugs, and then it becomes transgender. That's how sin multiplies, and it all started by just lust. That's how sin multiplies. And so we read in verses 3 through 7. But God came to Abimelech in a dream by night and said to him, indeed, you are a dead man, because of the woman you have taken, for she is a man's wife. But Abimelech had not come near her, and he said, Lord, will you slay a righteous nation also? Did he not say to me, she is my sister? And even she herself said, he is my brother. In the integrity of my heart and innocence of my hands, I have done this. And God said to him in a dream, yes, I know you did this in the integrity of your heart. For I also withheld you from sinning against me. Therefore, I did not let you touch her. Now therefore, restore the man's wife, for he is a prophet. And he will pray for you, and you shall live. But if you do not restore her, know that you shall surely die, you and all who are yours. So after Abimelech takes Sarah, the Lord comes to him in a dream, more so like a nightmare. And the Lord tells Abimelech, not that you're going to be a dead man. You are a dead man. And Abimelech says, whoa, what's happened? You've taken a man's wife. And Abimelech tells the Lord, I didn't know. I didn't even come near her. And he's talking sexually speaking. And he says, Abraham told me that was his sister. And even she said that Abraham's her brother. So Abimelech's defense before the Lord is twofold. Number 1, I was misled. I was misinformed. And number 2, I acted in good conscience. But Abraham's lack of integrity, his sin, greatly afflicted Abimelech and his family, as we'll read in verse 17 and 18. And this is what sin does. It doesn't just affect your heart, but again, it affects those around you, even those you love and care for. Too often, and I use we in generalizing, we treat small sins like they're harmless, thinking that it's a small sin, it's only just going to affect me, it's only going to touch me. But again, sin is a good mathematician. It multiplies, and the consequences, they spread farther and farther out, farther than you could even imagine. Sin promises cotton candy, pleasure for a season. But it doesn't stay sweet for long. Sin leaves us hardened, our heart hardened, it leaves us empty and often hurt. and has major ripple effects. Think of the pastor skimming money from the offering. It's my money, it's my church, so I'm just going to take a 20 there, I'm going to take a 20 there, I'm going to take a 50 there, I'm going to take 100 here, and then it all comes out. Now, how's the congregation going to feel? Man, you can't trust the church. If men of God act like this, then I want nothing to do with God. And there goes a whole congregation. But it's just a $20 bill. Or again, I made the, lust and watching porn. That affects your intimacy. That affects your future relationships. Or being angry at the news, the Republicans or, the Democrats in Palestine and Israel. I hate. Well, that affects every single aspect of your life. Then you're just angry. And then you look at people as them. But those are people the Lord has died for, and we're called to love them as believers. Or how about laziness? I think especially for the men, and slothfulness. If you're lazy men, that's going to affect your family and give Christians a bad. Aren't Christians supposed to do everything unto the Lord? And I think I'm going to talk to the men for a little bit. Abraham was, or you could say he is, called to protect and cherish and clothe his wife, to be the covering and be her strength. But instead, he's lying to save his own skin. And I'll say this. The Lord looks to the man, the husband, the father, the priest of the house to manage and take care of his family well. And if he's not doing that, that's going to affect everyone in the household. It starts with dad. And if dad is not leading, if the husband's not leading, it's not going to be pretty. It's a sober reminder that God holds men, husbands, fathers, and spiritual leaders responsible for the condition of their homes. The Lord looks to Abraham, looks to you future men who are going to lead your future families to protect and to guide your family in righteousness. And when a man walks in integrity, or doesn't walk in integrity, I should say, the fallout is going to be dangerous. I even think you can even apply this to a youth group. If you men, 6th or 8th graders, talking to all of y'all, if you are not leading spiritually, then how are the women? Well, they're just boys. They don't take the word seriously. They don't take worship seriously, so why should I? Men, your integrity matters, and your obedience to the Lord matters. We're called to lead well and in righteousness. And if we don't, it will be felt. It's like when dad is always yelling at mom. And his son is doing the math. Again, sin is a good mathematician. Well, dad is always yelling at mom. I guess that's how a real man, a husband, should speak to his wife. Again, it's multiplying. Now it's not just you, but it's your future generations. Or even his daughter. I guess that's how women are supposed to be taught to. And I should just accept that form of treatment. Sin multiplies its patterns until someone breaks the cycle in the family. A dad can know every stat on a specific team. Can know all the players. No, I'm never going to, know all the players, know where they went to school, how much they weigh, what position they play, but God forbid they take their family to Sunday night prayer or know one of their teacher's name at school. And again, priorities are out of line, and that's going to be felt in the family. So how do you think the kids are going to grow up, Dad? Being distracted by worldly things. And I'm talking to all of us now. But for youth, being distracted by the things of the world, the cares of this world, and it could be sports, it could be theater or drama, while you're neglecting fellowship with the bride of Christ. That has real consequences. A youth who doesn't prioritize the Lord, now their parents are going to come back, when the kid's 18, and Josh, I don't know what happened to her. I don't know what happened to my son. He was in youth group, but he wasn't in youth group. He chose Wednesday practices, or you chose Wednesday practices and Sunday games over coming to church and spending time in the Word and spending time in fellowship. That's what happened. Priorities got out of line, and now here are the consequences. And again, sin doesn't just affect us. It has ripple effects that reach far beyond what we see. It even affects the future you. But I'll say this as well. As believers, we're called to live lives that honor the Lord and reflect his righteousness, because our actions and the way we live, whether good or bad, become examples to those around us. Our walk with the Lord carries weight, a weight of responsibility. Because the way we live our lives can point others towards the Lord or can turn others off towards the Lord. And Jesus says in Matthew 18, verse 6, "But if you cause one of these little ones who trust in me to fall into sin, it would be better for you to have a large millstone tied around your neck and be thrown into the depths of the sea." What am I trying to make? Our choices don't just live in a box. They don't just live in isolation. Our sin can become someone else's stumbling block. And as believers, again, we're called to live lives that honor and glorify the Lord and set a righteous example. And again, Jesus uses an imaginary millstone tied around your neck, illustrating how devastating your sin can be towards others. Hidden sin, whether they're private and secret, those things never stay hidden for long. And sooner rather than later, they're going to start to leak into every aspect of your life. Relationships, leadership, reputation, and influence. In Joshua chapter 7, we read about a man named Achan. And it was after the battle of Jericho, they get this tremendous victory. And the Lord says, hey, don't take any of the plunder. But Achan says, there's a lot of plunder here. So he's like, let me just take a little bit. He takes a little bit, he buries it in his treasure, in his lockbox in the bank. And then the Israelites go out to battle once again, and they lose. They actually lose 36 men, which was unheard of. Again, there are millions of people, but Israelites, I guess they weren't called the Jews, but the Israelites, they would win every battle without any casualties. But now people have died. And Joshua was like, Lord, why did we lose the battle? Men have died. Because there's sin in the camp. And it was to Achan. Achan just took a little bit. But now family members have lost their dads. How about another example? 2 Samuel chapter 11 and 12. David sinned with Bathsheba. What began as just private lust spiraled into murder. And then the harsh treatment of his daughter Tamar. Family betrayal. And then eventually the kingdom was split all because of David and Bathsheba. Israel was split. And David's sin had generational consequences. Or even Jonah. Jonah was a prophet. Jonah tried to hide from God, but his rebellion endangered the entire crew of a ship. It's like, why are we in the storm? We're all about to die. And Jonah says, it's because of me. It's because of you while we're in this storm. Again, sin doesn't just affect you. Again, Abimelech in this account, completely innocent. Hadn't done anything wrong. Lord, I was acting in good conscience. I didn't know. And yet, Abimelech's innocence didn't protect him from the ripple effects of Abraham's sin. Because of Abraham's lie, Abimelech's entire household was struck. And as we read, with barrenness. And I think this is also another sobering truth. Your innocence doesn't shield you from the consequences of other people's sin. You may be innocent, but you still may be affected. I did nothing wrong. That's how sin is. Sin's fallout doesn't stop at just the sinner. You may be walking in holiness, you may be walking in uprightness, doing nothing wrong, but then you find yourself feeling the tremors of other people's sin. What happened? Oh, it's because of this person. Well, why am I being affected? That's how sin is. The choices and sins of others can spill into your life. Again, sin doesn't stay in a box. Sin doesn't stay contained. It impacts those around you, even the blameless. Sin entangles the uninvolved. I have nothing to do with this. Yeah, but we're going to entangle you. Think of a divorce. Mom and dad get divorced. Who feels the brunt of it? The children. Children did nothing wrong. But then they're wounded by the divorce of mom and dad. Or think of secondhand smoking. I'm not the one holding the cigarette, but you're still breathing poison into your lungs, and it could be worse than actually smoking the cigarettes. Sin lies about the price. It looks small. I feel justified doing this. I think I can manage this. But once you begin to fantasize, once dad begins to drink himself into oblivion, dad is here, but he's not really here. He's there, but he's not here. Or telling that crass joke, in the locker room or 5 minutes before worship, I'm going to tell this crash joke, and then 5 minutes into worship, I'm going to be lifting my hands. Do you know what you were just doing a couple minutes ago? Just for the laugh. Wearing that outfit to draw attention to your body, and then you go home, crying yourself to sleep because I'm just treated as, a piece of meat. Or letting your eyes linger just a little longer than they should. The cost will multiply. It seems small. It seems just for a flash, just for a second. But it will be far worse than you imagined. Even the garden. Just have a little bite. Well, that bite turned into rebellion, invited pain, separation, and spiritual death for all of humankind. Thank you, Eve. I was thinking about this today. Sin is like a credit card. By the way, don't get a credit card. Dave Ramsey, don't get a credit card. A credit card is enjoy now and pay later. I have, how much? Okay, free money, right? It's not really free. You can buy stuff on a credit card, but you will have to pay it back later on. And here's the thing, with interest. I thought I only owed 1,000. Now you owe 5,000. What happened? That's what sin is. It multiplies upon itself. Sin costs more than what you think. It will take you farther than you wanted to go. And it costs more than what you wanted to pay. But what is the cost? You guys know. Romans 6:23. For the wages of sin is what? Death. You see from David. David lost his integrity. He also lost his son because of his sin. Samson. Shimshon. His name is Sonny. His sin with Delilah. Couldn't keep his eyes off the Philistine woman. Lost his strength. They gouged out and plucked out his eyes. We always skip that in the movies. And he lost his freedom. Think of Judas. Judas lost his soul. I want to exhort y'all. The enemy is after you, especially the youth of this generation. And he's going to tempt you with cotton candy. Pleasure, it's sweet. It's harmless. Come on, just have some. And you can have as much cotton candy as you want, but it's never going to fill you. You're going to throw it up. It's going to be worse than how you felt in the beginning. Cotton candy will never truly satisfy. What seems fun, what seems exciting in the moment will always leave a bitter aftertaste. Always. Proverbs 6, verse 27 and 28 says, can a man scoop a flame into his lap and not have his clothes catch on fire? Can he walk on hot coals and not blister his feet? Just as a man cannot grab a flame, fire, and sit it on his lap without his clothes catching on fire, not can a man walk on hot coals and not burn his feet. It's the same with sin. You dabble, you play with sin just a little bit, it's going to hurt. Oh, well, I'm going to leave. You're not going to leave unscathed. Now, I won't say that. Sin affects you, but it also it affects others, but I think primarily affects your relationship with the Lord. Every compromise, every lie, every indulgence creates a subtle barrier that becomes larger and larger and larger with your relationship with the Lord. Psalm 32, verses 1 through 5. I'll read it all. Oh, this is David. Oh, what a joy for those whose disobedience is forgiven, whose sin is put out of sight. Yes, what joy for those whose record the Lord has cleared of guilt, whose lives are lived in complete honesty. When I refused to confess my sin, my body wasted away. And I groaned all day long. Day and night, your hand of discipline was heavy on me. My strength evaporated like water in the summer heat. Interlude. I don't know why I read that part. Finally, I confessed all my sins to you and stopped, trying to hide my guilt. I said to myself, I will confess my rebellion to the Lord, and you forgave me. All my guilt is gone. There are many of those who speculate that David is writing this after his sin with Bathsheba. And after he confessed, and he's saying, when no one knew, when it was just Bathsheba and I, the hand of the Lord was heavy on me. I could not go to sleep. You guys ever do a sin and you can't stop thinking about it? And people are looking at you and you're like, do they know? That's how David felt. It ate him alive. until he confessed. So sin will steal your intimacy with God. So stop believing the lie. It just affects me. It's just me. Abraham thought his lie would just affect himself and his bride, Sarah. But his deception led an entire household in danger and compromised the messianic line. So every word you say, every click on the website, every attitude you have will send ripple effects. And also for this, why did Abraham do this? Because of fear. Needless to say, don't have fear drive you to sin. When fear becomes the driving force of us making decisions, we open the door for sin to take root. But we're called to trust in the Lord. Even when circumstances seem threatening. All right, Sarah, you're still really beautiful, and they might kill me, but the Lord just promised us that we're going to have a son in a year. So I can't die. Instead of trusting in the Lord, he opened the lane for sin. Keep note, sin is never isolated. And so, after the dream, or during the dream, the Lord tells Abimelech that, hey, I know you didn't do anything. And he tells Abimelech to restore Sarah to Abraham so that he would live. Verse 8. So Abimelech rose early in the morning, called all his servants, and told all those things in their hearing. And the men were very much afraid. And Abimelech called Abraham and said to him, what have you done to us? Have I offended you, that you have brought on me and on my kingdom a great sin? You have done deeds to me that ought not to be done. Then Abimelech said to Abraham, what did you have in view that you have done this thing? And Abraham said, because I thought, surely the fear of God is not in this place, and they will kill me on account of my wife. But indeed, she is truly my sister. She is the daughter of my father, but not the daughter of my mother, and she became my wife. And it came to pass, when God caused me to wander from my father's house, that I said to her, this is your kindness that you should do for me. In every place, wherever we go, say of me, he is my brother. So Abimelech wakes up from the dream, from the nightmare, shivering and sweating. And he's like, we need to have a staff meeting. So he called the staff meeting in the middle of the night and tells his servants, the Lord came to me. And he calls Abraham that morning. And he asks him, why did you lie to me? What hope did you have to gain, Abraham? And Abraham tells him, okay, I was afraid. My wife is really beautiful. I thought you were going to kill me and take my wife, and I know the Lord's not really in this place, so I was afraid. And Abraham also says, well, and also, Abimelech, I got to correct you. She's technically is my sister. Like, if you take this and take that, then she's technically my sister, which is technically true. Not technically, it is true. But not. Abraham would rather lie than just state the truth. And I'll say this, lies, I'm going to talk about lying for a little bit. Lies leave a wake of hurt and destruction behind it. Lying, again, sinning in general, never makes things better, but it makes things worse. It's like painting over mold. Oh, there's mold. Let me just paint over it. You're not doing anything. It might look better, but it's going to come back even worse. It hides the problem temporarily, but it doesn't remove the rot, the problem. Let's just cover the surface for a little bit. That's what lying is. I'll say this, it's better to live with the consequences of telling the truth than lying with the consequences of telling a lie, than living with the consequences. And again, Abraham lied about Sarah being his sister. I'm hoping that me deceiving and me lying would protect my life. And he kind of justified it. Well, she is my sister, so is it really a lie? Again, he justified it with fear and partial trust. But again, instead of solving the problem, he multiplied the problem, and he put an innocent king at risk in his entire household. Again, where there is one lie, there are multiple lies. Living with the consequences of telling the truth is always better than living the consequences of a lie. Proverbs 28, verse 13 says, people who conceal their sins will not prosper, But if they confess and turn from them, they will receive mercy. So verse 14 through 18. Then Abimelech took sheep, oxen, and male and female servants and gave them to Abraham. And he restored Sarah to his wife to him. And Abimelech said, "See, my land is before you. Dwell where it pleases you." Then to Sarah he said, "Behold, I've given your brother 1,000 pieces of silver. Indeed, this vindicates you before all who are with you and before everybody." Thus she was rebuked. So Abraham prayed to God, and God healed Abimelech, his wife, and his female servants. Then they bore children. For the Lord had closed up the wombs of the household of Abimelech because of Sarah, Abraham's wife. So Abimelech, after Abraham confesses the truth, Abimelech blesses Abraham and gives him blessing and says, hey, you can dwell anywhere in the land of Gerar. He also gives them 1,000 pieces of silver. And so Abraham prays for Abimelech and the household, and the women who were Abimelech's, their wombs were open and because they were barren for a time. So which kind of implies this was prolonged. This was probably weeks or maybe even months. But wrapping it up, again, sin is a good mathematician. Sin always costs more than what you plan. And what's the antidote to it? It's telling the truth and living in the truth. Be honest and be truthful with the Lord. By the way, and with others. But it starts with being honest and truthful with the Lord. Even when you may be fearful over a situation, this is not going to be good, I'm going to get in trouble, whatever it may be, truth will allow the Lord to work in your life. And avoid temptation to cover up sin. Avoid the temptation to cover up sin. Hiding it just multiplies the damage. And number 2, recognize the area in your life in which the enemy will attack. Because if not dealt with soon, again, it will multiply. And you guys are young, you guys have the energy to deal with it. Abraham, as we see, struggled with lying. This is his second time. By the way, his son Isaac is going to do the exact same thing in a couple chapters from now. He struggled with lying. It was a familiar pattern in his life. And like Abraham, we all have that reoccurring sin that so easily besets us, as Hebrews talks about. Think of the sin that you struggle with. That's sin. We need to deal with it with the Lord. Because sin is a good mathematician. It keeps track. And even if it just seems small, even if it may just seem, it's just a white lie. It's just a lingering look. It's just a careless joke, I said. It compounds into something greater. Temptation always promises an easy way out. But again, it never tells you about the interest. The crass joke so that you may get a laugh. The white lie so that you can make yourself look better. How big was your fish? It's this big. Was it really that big? I thought it was the size of a small Honda, but you're fishing at Greg's Lake. Let me tell you, it was that big. Or that ad that pops up. What are you going to do? Are you going to linger just a little too long? Or maybe even that flirtatious compliment. You know what you're doing. Oh, it's just a compliment. No, you know what you're doing. Or the moment of frustration, where you try to justify your anger without surrendering it to the Lord. I have a right to be angry. Well, it seems more than just anger. Recognize your weakness. What is that sin that so easily besets you? And ask the Lord, Lord, give me strength to live in the truth before the equation starts to add up on top of each other. And lastly, number 3, consider, JK, I lied. I have one more. But consider the ripple effects of your choices, number 3. Every sinful choice doesn't just affect you, but it affects your family, your friends, your church. But I think also on the flip side, just as sin multiplies, every faithful choice multiplies. And your obedience can strengthen your faith, your friends, and impacts those that you may never see. It says in Hebrews, stir and provoke one another to good works. So my last point, number 4, even though Abraham's sin had real consequences that he didn't take into account, I think this story, shows the grace of the Lord. And I think the next time I teach this, I'm going to flip it. Because if you read closely, it doesn't talk a lot about the sin. You don't see the Lord coming to Abraham and saying, what's wrong with you? But it just shows the Lord is gracious despite of Abraham's sin and failure. Again, Abraham failed twice. Struggled with the sin of lying, walking in fear, and gave in to temptation instead of trusting in the Lord. And yet, the narrative, as we read, doesn't really linger in the judgment. But it draws to God's faithful intervention and his willingness for the Lord to still act despite of Abraham's failure. Abimelech and his household, they were spared by the full fallout of Abraham's deception. Sarah was protected. Abraham himself was rebuked, but he wasn't abandoned by the Lord. And again, our sins have consequences. Abraham's sins had consequences. But I also want to mention this. Your sins don't put you out of reach for the Lord's mercy. Think of Paul. Paul persecuted Christians. But yet, the Lord saved him, and he became the Apostle Paul. Or in John chapter 8, whether it's in the Bible or not, the woman caught in adultery. Caught in the very act of adultery. Are you ready to stone her, Lord? Yeah, the Lord forgave her and called her to a changed life. You would think she deserved judgment. Or David, adultery with Bathsheba, murdered his friend. But he repented, and what happened? The Lord forgave, as we just read in Psalm 32. What about Peter? Denied Jesus 3 times. I don't think y'all have done that. The Lord still restored Peter. What about addictions? People out there struggling with drugs or gambling or whatever compulsive behaviors. Or anger or bitterness, holding grudges and rage, resentment, sexual sin, adultery, pornography, lust. What about idolatry of self? Feeling prideful and selfishness. I'm only thinking about myself. Seeking the approval of others besides the Lord. And yet, God is still there. And I love this account. Let's not focus so much on the sin, which in this teaching I did, because it's there. But it also shows, Abraham messed up. But I'm going to orchestrate it. I'm going to forgive him. The Lord's quick to forgive. So I want you to feel encouraged. Even when you may fail repeatedly, again, with that sin, God's grace is way bigger than your mistakes. The Lord is quick to forgive. The Lord is quick to show grace and mercy, even when we don't deserve it. Abraham, you're about to mess up the whole plan the Lord has orchestrated. And yet the Lord forgave him and loved him and restored him. That's the God we serve. That's the God that we follow. Amen?